This car costs $80,000. And it has the Dark Horse badge. But look at the shifter, and then you see the shifter, and it's like, oh, congratulations. You've found the easiest way to buy the wrong Dark Horse. I'm your host, Brian Makse, and on this channel you get reviews for drivers from drivers. So the question is simple. Without the manual transmission and the handling package, is this a Dark Horse or is it a GT wearing tactical pants? .500 horsepower sounds extraordinary until you realize what it has to go through. This Gen 4 Coyote wants to be revved. It doesn't make peak power until after 7,200 RPM, which sometimes means that the torque at the bottom end is more like a polite suggestion instead of an enthusiastic shove. And nail that gas pedal from a roll, and there's a moment where this car just sort of gathers itself. Oof. And then when you get to the top end, it acts like it's been saving all the good stuff. And then you also understand why Ford went forged internals with this engine. In some ways, the Coyote has always had a bit of a personality problem. It doesn't sound like a muscle car of old. It sounds like something that should be wearing a helmet. And above 5,000 RPM, this has the kind of urgency that nothing with any kind of forced induction can replicate. It's got this hard-edged wail that belongs on a racetrack, not a parking lot. And at its 7,500 RPM redline, it sounds genuinely angry. Yes, the 10-speed automatic is the elephant in this room, and it shifts fast. Ford will tell you that. But fast and smart are two different things. In normal mode, it seems like it hunts for the tallest gear as if it's trying to win a trophy for the best fuel efficiency. I'm calling that boat mode, not because it's slow, but because it's always thinking about towing something. Switch to sport, and it holds gears longer, which is great, but mid-corner downshift requests through the paddle shifters have a hesitation to them that remind you that this 10-speed automatic was indeed designed to tow boats. It does the job, but it just doesn't make the job exciting. The 355 with the limited slip back there is doing the Lord's work here. 500 horsepower and 275 wide rubber at the rear. It's like this Ford is doing motivational speaking to rubber. You got this, buddy. No, I don't. Punch it out of a low-speed corner and the traction control light becomes a strobe. The diff itself is predictable and it sends power cleanly, but it's being asked to deploy more power and torque than those contact patches can handle. The chassis and the drivetrain here are writing checks that this rubber simply cannot cash. Peak torque at 4,900 RPM means this engine rewards patience, and down low it's polite. It's Canada spec horsepower. And then when this Coyote hits 6,000 RPM, it turns into a caffeinated attorney arguing your case in court. This automatic is listed as a $0 cost option. What it actually costs you is a delightful Tremec manual that no other Mustang gets. Rev match downshifts are competent, but they're not perfect in the way an M4 competition would be. The manual would make this downshift feel like a ritual. Here it feels like a chore. Thankfully, full throttle upshifts are exceptionally quick, but it's ironic that the best thing that this gearbox does is the one thing that requires the least amount of driver input. The active exhaust does some serious work here, and in quiet mode, it's actually genuinely civilized. In track mode, it does all the things. It crackles, it bellows, it tries to communicate that it's actually doing something urgent. Ford tuned the exhaust like they tuned the engine. It rewards commitment. Subscribers get notified when new episodes drop on this channel. Non-subscribers hope the algorithm will show it to them eventually. And if you want to see when new episodes drop on our channel, well, that's what the subscribe button does. This electric power steering is that frustrating middle ground of this Dark Horse. It's better than it has any right to be in a Mustang, but not quite good enough to shake a stick at the Europeans. In sport mode, there's some decent weight to it, and there's a hint of what's going on at the road surface that comes through the steering wheel. And on center, there's this little dead zone, maybe about 2 degrees worth, where the steering's undecided about whether you're actually turning. Once you're loaded into a corner, though, communication improves dramatically, both from the steering and from the chassis. It just takes commitment to get there. 6-piston Brembos and 390mm rotors on a 3,900-pound car definitely makes sense. And for road use, I absolutely love this brake pedal. Pedal effort just a little higher than normal, which is great for a high-performance car like this. And then feel is fantastic as well. The pedal does a great job of communicating what's going on at those front contact patches. Pedal is linear, progressive, and I can modulate this on the brake pedal with a tremendous amount of precision. Not something you expect from a pony car. Apparently, these are the same brakes that you'd get with the handling package. This is the one area where the wrong spec Dark Horse isn't actually missing anything. Here's the contradiction at the heart of this car. MagneRide dampers are standard, and they're genuinely excellent. They're paired with the standard springs and standard sway bars. In a straight line or big sweepers like this, the chassis is composed and confident all the time. Throw it into a tight directional change like this and you feel the weight. That 3,900 pounds has nowhere to hide. With these tires, the front wants to push, the rear wants to rotate. The tires are the whole bottleneck mediating this argument. Better rubber would transform this car. Here's the dirty little secret of this wrong spec Dark Horse. Without the handling package's stiffer suspension setup and different tires, this thing actually rides comfortably. Ford accidentally built the Dark Horse Touring Edition. It's comfortable, it's composed, it's even happy on rough pavement. If you wanted to track this car, this is the part where you quietly realize you ordered the wrong pizza. Ford accidentally built the best Grand Touring Mustang by leaving the track parts in the catalog. The sway bars on this spec are larger than the GTs, but smaller than those on the handling package, which kind of creates a Goldilocks zone that nobody asked for. They're not quite soft enough to be relaxed, and yet they're not quite stiff enough to be sharp. And weight transfer under heavy braking, and you can feel that rear end unload. With those 275s at the rear, trail braking gets a little lively, and some of us actually like that. On the other hand, the handling package with its 315 wide rears would give you a lot more confidence trail braking into a corner. If you want to support the channel beyond just watching, well, the merch store is open, and your support there means more time for us to produce episodes like this, less time worrying about manufacturer blacklists. No pressure, just an option. These Recaros dominate the cockpit, but they also define the experience. They genuinely hold you in place through the corners, where the standard Mustang seats would be a core workout every time you turn the wheel. The rest of the seating position is fine. There's enough adjustment in the steering column and the seat, but I'd really like to get this seat much lower in the chassis. For me, it would just work better that way. I adapted to it in about 10 minutes, and that's the driver's job. After all, you're meant to adapt to the equipment that you've been given, but given what this car costs, well, it shouldn't require adaptation. Ford did something clever with the steering wheel, and I really appreciate it. The drive mode buttons are here easily within reach of your thumb, so you don't have to take your hands off the steering wheel to change the drive mode. On the other hand, we do have a flat bottom steering wheel here, which is purely for aesthetics. Anyway, the secondary controls on the steering wheel are clever and thoughtful, but what's not thoughtful is where the damper settings are. If you want to adjust the dampers alone, well, they're buried in a menu in this system. If you're going to give people adjustable dampers, at least give them a button. The interior quality conversation with the S650 Mustang is the same as always. Better than it was, worse than it should be. The Dark Horse adds some blue stitching, and there's some faux carbon fiber, and it all looks very good, and it photographs really well. Ford spent money on where the cameras point, and that's honest in a way that's almost refreshing. The instrument cluster and the infotainment system sit behind one piece of glass, which is dramatic. On the other hand, I've discovered that there are some annoying reflections in various lighting conditions. And if I remember correctly, they used some sort of fighter jet analogy to describe all of this, but the fact of the matter is it works best at night. With the manual, you get a cool shift knob. With the automatic, you get this, which looks like it belongs in an Explorer. The manual's interior vibe is part of what you're paying for, and this one doesn't have it. Most car makers treat a sound system in a performance car like an afterthought, but that's actually not the case here. This Bang & Olufsen sound system is fantastic. And come to think of it, this Dark Horse is comfortable, it's got a great sound system. Maybe it's not so bad after all. The like button tells YouTube to share this episode with more people like you interested in an episode like this, and if this video gave you more information than what's in a brochure or a press release, well, that's the entire ask. That's what the Dark Horse told me. Here's what it's telling people who actually own one of these. And the number one thing owners agree on is the Tremec manual is the number one reason to buy a Dark Horse over a GT. Across every major forum, owners call it the crown jewel of the package. Without it, the consensus is blunt. You've bought a GT with coolers and a badge. Second, and this is important if you're going to buy the automatic for track use, owners are reporting the 10-speed overheating and triggering limp mode as early as lap 4. Ford relocated the PCM into the space where the Mach 1 secondary transmission cooler used to live. The manual doesn't share this problem. Third, the infotainment system. Sync 4 crashes frequently enough that owners have memorized a hard reset procedure. Hold volume down and right arrow for 10 seconds. That's not a tech tip, that's a coping mechanism. And to be fair, Sync 4 has already crashed on me once during this test. On a positive note, owners report that the engine wakes up after about 500 miles after the ECU adapts. The car you drive off the lot is not the car you'll have a month later. So the ownership experience is this: brilliant drivetrain, questionable electronics, and a community that overwhelmingly says, get the manual. If you own one of these or have some quality seat time in one of these, let me know in the comments what I got right and what I got wrong, because owner experiences are much more valuable than anything I can learn in a week-long press loan, and I always read those comments. So can you spec a Dark Horse wrong? Yes, unequivocally. This is an $80,000 car that's missing two very important things that distinguish this from a GT: the Tremec manual and the handling package. What's left is 500 horsepower, excellent brakes, and a comfortable ride. That's a Grand Tourer. A very fast, very expensive Grand Tourer, but I don't think it's what Dark Horse was designed to be. If you want a comfortable cruiser, buy a GT and save 12 grand. If you want a track car, buy a Dark Horse with the manual and the handling package. This middle ground, automatic, standard tires, Molten Magenta paint, is an identity crisis with a window sticker. It does nothing badly, but nothing with conviction. Don't let the dealer talk you into this spec unless you simply cannot resist the color. And I will admit, this color is very distinctive and very, very good, especially if it's your jam. Here, the Dark Horse badges mean 500 horsepower and a different aesthetic. Without the manual transmission and the handling package, it's just a tune and some connecting rods. It's an expensive engine upgrade with a marketing department. This has $6,000 in matte clear film. It also has $0 in handling package. This car is dressed for the photo, but skipping the race. And don't forget, this car cost $80,000. That's C8 territory. Mid-engine, dual clutch transmission, and proper grip. This Dark Horse needs that handling package to even begin that conversation. That's the Ford Mustang Dark Horse. Subscribe if you want to see more episodes like this. Don't if you don't. Comments are open if you disagree. And if you want to help fund more of these, well, the merch store is open. See you on the next one.